Welcome to SomPrana. My name is Dr. Aarti Soorya. I'm an integrative medicine physician.
I'm Sara Herr. I'm an EFT and somatic practitioner.
So today we wanted to talk about overfunctioning, in particular to women, but this can be applicable to males as well, and how that kind of affects your health. And so, Sara, you see a lot of clients. What are some common themes or things that you want to kind of bring to light for some people?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I see, especially with women, that they tend to take on a very heavy role within their family, whether that's the extended family, their immediate family, if they have children, spouse, or with parents, that they tend to take on the social emotional role along with making sure everything runs smoothly. And they do this pretty constantly. So their mind's all the time thinking about the next thing they should be doing, where they should be going, how everybody is doing. And what this does is this keeps them in a fight or flight because they're constantly functioning for everybody else all the time. And they aren't really dispersing some of that responsibility to others, or they aren't bringing themselves back to the present moment, and they're continually worried about what to do next because they feel like they need to do all the things, whether that's volunteering, um, sports, extracurriculars, putting their kids in all of these things. And it's really hard to see that it's actually keeping them in this hypervigilant fight or flight state.
Mhm.
I know you see it too. Of,
Yeah, I mean, I see like a lot of women that are very high performing. And so they're like the go-getters at work. And so then they're like doing all of the things, there, like the same kind of stuff, but like for work. And I think there's like the high functioning woman, and then the plus being a mother also, like, that is like a recipe for a nervous system that can be really dysregulated. I'm not saying you have to be one or the other. By itself, being a woman in this culture can be very, you can kind of be conditioned to be over functioning. So it's not just one or the other. Please don't, take it like that. But it's just like how you feel is legit. And it's usually a reflection of how our culture is kind of shaping women to be. And I feel like in a way, the culture isn't community based as much anymore. So it does fall, like, all the responsibilities. Um, if you are a mother, it's like isolated to that unit, right? And so it's a lot for one, couple or one single mom or whatever it may be. It's a lot for them to take on.
it is, and it used to be more dispersed amongst the family. A lot of multi-generational homes used to be popular, like having grandparents live with you, having even like aunts and cousins live with you, and everyone's spreading out, the responsibilities of the household. We're so leaning
Do
on.
everything ourselves.
Yeah. And even, I mean, it's even with men is that we are seeing them lean more into the home, but it still is a lot with them both working full time, both having to take care of the home. And a lot of times if there's children in the picture, it's extracurriculars or their social calendar, or if there isn't children, it's still volunteering or doing this extra things for work, or taking on a lot more than we should be. And there's not this time for integration or downtime in our day to be able to settle, be in our body, and to integrate really what has happened through our day. It tends to be sun up, we move, and sundown, we crash.
Yeah, and I think this culture, right? This is how it shows up now in a lot of the women that I see in clinic is like insomnia, hormone imbalance, like, such as PMS or weight loss resistance or mood issues, you name it, digestive issues. And people don't quite put the connection together that it is their own internal system that is dysregulated, causing those symptoms to come about. And those symptoms are an alarm to kind of tell you, hey, something is off. It's a beautiful messenger to be like, this is not sustainable. Like, listen to me, because if you keep going down this path, there are repercussions to it. And, it's hard because when you're conditioned, like in a culture where it's like women can do as much as men. And I'm all for that. Like I'm all for women empowerment and individuality and, your own sustainability. But we have to recognize also that physiologically we're very different than men. And the workforce was designed for a male's physiology. It was not designed for a female's physiology. So how we kind of navigate working, and if you are a mother on top of that, or a partner or whatever, that also has to shift, and it has to be kind of a conscious decision because the culture isn't set up for that yet.
Yeah. And because of this expectation too of women of what their role should be, is relationships can cause a stress response, because when we show up to relationships, we automatically feel this pressure of responsibility. We
Mhm.
automatically feel like, what should we doing? We should be worrying about their feelings. We don't want to hurt their feelings in this like kind of
Everyone, hey.
where we expect women to be people pleasers, and we're a little bit harder on women than men when it comes to setting boundaries or saying no, or saying like
Right.
calling someone out. We're not as comfortable with allowing women
Mhm.
show the range of emotions, especially anger or frustration or annoyance. Maybe we're okay with some of the vulnerable and crying. um,
Sure.
when a woman shows up frustrated or angry or annoyed, we tend to shut that down and put a pretty unkind label on.
Right. And I think what you and I really want to hone in on is that every emotion is valid. There's no good or bad. It is just there to give you information.
Yeah.
If there is anger there, why is there anger there?
Mhm. Yeah, what's happening that's causing the anger? Is this old?
Yeah,
Or is there something right now that you do need to say something? Just say like, hey, I didn't like that.
right.
You need to leave the room, or you need to remove yourself, or you need to change something. Anger shows up for a reason. And when we are afraid of it, it shows up as a stress response. I have a lot of women that they're so good at gaslighting their own anger. And when I
Hmm.
tell them that what happened,
You feel that way, or oh no, but they're going through a hard time, or oh they've been through this, like making excuses for other people's behaviors.
yeah,
Um,
I always say two things can be true, but right
yeah,
now we're thinking about your experience.
right.
And this is that hyper vigilant energy that tends to show up as a stress response. Is we're conditioned, which empathy is a good thing. So we're not reacting to other people, but we are conditioned to constantly quickly switch to the other side and not first sit with our own experience. This is another way we overfunction, is when we are experiencing something, a lot of times women are programmed to quickly see how everybody else is experiencing it.
Hmm.
Then what happens is they're in a stress response because they're shutting down, they're suppressing that, and they're in this hypervigilant state. Well, how are they feeling? How are they feeling? Well, I know that angered me or hurt my feelings, but what's happening for them?
Hmm.
Instead of first being able to say, I did not like that,
Right.
does not sit well with me. And what do I need to do to shift this? Because no matter what's happening with that other person, anger shows up a lot of times to tell us we do have to set some boundaries or change some things here. You can still understand what's happening for the other person, but we have to sit with our own anger. We have to admit it, and we have to show up for ourselves and not just be like, well, I have compassion. I hear that a lot. I have a lot of compassion for them. And this tends to lead to overfunctioning and to constantly looking at it from their eyes and seeing their experience and ignoring and suppressing anger, which has been shown through study and study to cause disease, to dysregulate us, to have all these symptoms show up. And then, like you said, we see hormonal, digestive, autoimmune. We see all of these issues pop up for women because we are over functioning for everybody, and our boundary between ourselves and others is very unclear.
Right.
We start and where they stop becomes unclear. And
And how I sometimes explain it for people, because it can feel selfish, right? Because we're conditioned a certain way to put ourselves first, that it's like everyone is responsible for their own internal state, no matter what they've been through, right? I have compassion for people who have been through trauma, but it is their own internal state that they have to learn to shift. So if you keep doing the work for others, you're denying them the opportunity to change as well.
Yes, yeah, and this is a lot talked about in codependence or with addiction, but it also happens in normal, non-addictive situations where if you show up as an enabler and you show up to like soothe and not set boundaries, you are actually keeping the other person from having to sit with that experience and be with it and learn how to grow from it. When
And have their aha moment.
Mhm.
Right? This is all your own journey, right? So, but it's a beautiful journey because then you get to learn to be like self-mastery in a way, which is way more empowering because when you can get to that state and you have more control over your physiology, therefore your symptoms, therefore your health, therefore your relationships, and they can be more harmonious that way too.
You can. Now, to getting back to like the over functioning, some of the ways I want to hear some of the ways that you have overcome it personally, or ways that you've learned to sit back when you need to sit back and noticing where you're over functioning.
Yeah, so I went to medical school, did residency, I was chief resident. So I was a, I'll work hard and that's my identity. And like that's, what I was, good at or appreciated for, right? And kind of more of an accommodating personality, like with those around me. And so I would always like take on more than I needed to. Even though, like your cup is full. Like it's just like it's done. Like there's no more like things that I needed to add to my plate, not cup full. Plate is full. Um, and like, then just doing more training while I was working, like in the integrative like functional medicine world. So, and then like when I joined a clinic, then it was like learning all the different protocols and yes, okay, tell me more. Yeah, okay, I'll learn that. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. And it was just like people pleasing, total people pleasing for acceptance or for like, yeah, I guess acceptance. And just even in just general relationships and stuff, just being overly accommodating for other people and being overly understanding of their personal stories, that it would deplete me in the process. But it was like you're kind of conditioned to be this like put others first, right? Everybody else matters. You got to keep them happy. Therefore, then you are okay. And
Yeah.
it was very depleting. And so until I was like, I was switching clinics. At that point, I was like, I've effing had it. I'm just going to choose fun. And I don't know what's going to happen next in my career path, but I know I need to do this now.
Mhm.
I reached a breaking point, and that conscious decision was the best thing that I ever made, where I was just like, okay, I'm not going to put career first. I'm not putting others first. I'm literally putting my own joy first. And that's what I did. And then, I started to shift and like, it just seems so simple, but it was like the biggest thing that changed like how I was showing up. And then I learned like, I don't need to be nice. I mean, I'm kind to people, but I don't need to be overly nice. I don't need to overly explain myself. I don't need to overly like overcommit myself to a lot of things in work or even personal stuff. Like I can take that time. If I want to stay in, I'm going to stay in.
Yeah. And I like how you differentiated between the word kind and nice.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like you falsely are showing up, you're kind of lying about who you are, your experience, and you're just trying to be like, hi, how are you? Kind is I can manage my emotional experience, but I'm also going to be authentic. I'm going to show up lightly, but also I might set boundaries. I might say, nope, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Nice is just people pleasing. It's just, yes,
I was
okay.
very conditioned like that. I was very people pleasing, very people pleasing. And it's nice. Initially, I will say it was a little uncomfortable to put up boundaries because I wasn't really used to it. But then I was like, the better I was getting and the better my mood was and feeling and all this stuff, I was like, I mean, there's no other way to live.
Oh, and when I was being kind instead of nice, I was able to show up for the people I cared about differently. I was able to see them dysregulated and have it not dysregulate me because I had this boundary between me and other people. Where in
Mhm.
the past, if someone else was dysregulated, I immediately got dysregulated with them. That I didn't have the boundaries between myself and them because I was over functioning and reaching over into keeping them happy. So then when they weren't, I was dysregulated. But then it
Mhm.
was everybody's dysregulated because
The whole cycle keeps going.
we're just
Right.
trying to hold everybody else up. And really it's our own responsibility to keep ourselves regulated. It's our own responsibility to say no when we need to say no. And it's the
Mhm.
other person's responsibility to sit with that.
Yeah.
And learning that for me was a huge shift. And I had to learn that after having kids when I was realizing how burnt out I was, even with the kids having to, I was still over functioning and their experience and protecting them. So at first I was setting boundaries for them because it's your job when they're little, but and then I had to also learn as they age to be able to be regulated when they're dysregulated,
Mhm.
to be able to not overfunction for them, not do it like age appropriately. What can they do
Mhm.
and how can they show up? And I even had to find like there was this wonderful account, and I'm gonna have to tag it below because I cannot think of her name. But one of her, I saw like this advice that was the mom is you see all of the things that need done. That's our job is to see everything that needs done and then for us to tell everybody what needs done. But that's very exhausting.
Mhm.
You are the one who is constantly scanning what needs done, what should everybody be doing. And what I learned was like just little, but it was wonderful, is that you gave them a room they were in charge of. So like you're in charge of this living room, you're in charge of the dining room. And at the end of the day, you're the one who has to make sure it's cleaned up. And it's
Mhm.
their way to start teaching the others in your family to notice, like if you have kids who are old enough to notice, to pay attention, and not have you be like, hey, you need to pick that up, you need to pick that up, you need to do that. And it's to get other people to also notice in their environment what needs to be done rather than just the mom. And because that was taxing on my nervous system, is to constantly be the one who's like, they should be doing this, we should be, this needs
Yeah.
done. And those little shifts start having me not be the one who's over functioning for everybody.
Right.
And it's wonderful because now I've seen my kids sometimes do things without being asked because they saw it's just needed done. And
Mhm. That's
it,
powerful. Yeah.
it is because it adds up. And I also had to learn to start saying no to some things and start saying no to extracurriculars because both for my nervous system and for my kids' nervous system, it was over functioning. It was overachieving, feeling like we should be doing all these things. And they didn't have time to integrate what was happening in their day.
Uh-huh.
They were up, school, practice, dinner, bed. And it was really hard on their nervous system. I saw spikes in
Yeah.
anxiety,
Robots. Yeah.
or they more of the shutdown, or more it's kind of those like symptoms of where you're like, maybe I should take them in to get seen. But it really was because we were going. So then shut down and fight or flight was showing up. And when we slowed down, all of that minimized. Now they still do some extracurriculars, but finding the balance for us. Do you really enjoy this? As if, is this good for the health of the whole family? Is this good for your health? Is now what we ask when before we choose to do something, not whether I should be doing this, whether this is culturally expected of us to do all of these things and
And
shifting.
our culture is really, I would say, messed up in that. Like we're really, in a way conditioned to think all of our worth comes from achievements and doing and not being. And if you're just being, you're lazy or you're not worth anything. And so understanding that your worth doesn't come from over functioning, I think is really key.
It is, and working through those feelings, it takes time and it takes practice and it takes making those choices and sitting with the discomfort at first of making those choices before you can. Now, just, sitting and having breakfast and not doing a million things is good for your system. Having time just to sit and have nothing that you're supposed to
Yeah.
be is great for your system.
It's way better for your system, actually. Like, and it will actually inadvertently lead to more productivity or lead to more creativity, lead to more joy and stuff. So it's just our brain was designed for that. We need silence, or we need where you're not doing anything to, like you say, integrate all of the stuff that's happened.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of why people struggle with that is a lot of times when you do sit and integrate, some feelings might come up from your day.
That's okay. We don't need to be scared.
Yeah, and then we have to sit with those feelings, and learning to sit with those feelings can be really important to help us learn to stop over functioning because we can be running from those feelings.
Mhm. And the big picture, why it affects health is because if you're in a fight or flight state, you do not repair.
Mhm.
You cannot repair in fight or flight. So the goal is really when we can shift the body into a more adaptable state, that is when you repair. And I would think, I think like a lot of the diseases that we're seeing today is because we're not repairing.
Yeah,
So,
true.
but ultimately our goal is like when you are more regulated, there's more liberation there, there's more adaptability there, there's more peace and harmony in the family unit. And it's just a very empowering way to live, I feel like.
It is, really is. Now, if you want to go to our website, we are putting out courses. Right now we're doing a course on hormone health, but we will have more for practitioners, for other issues that you may be struggling with. And we hope you follow for more.